ladies and gentlemen, we remind you, please do not go on the field or in any way interfere with baseball still in play or throw objects of any kind onto the field or in the stands. Anyone violating these rules will be immediately removed without prior warning.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, you can tell who our guest is.
It's been a while. I'm out of practice.
If you know that voice.
He nailed it.
He nailed it. Of course he did. And he's been doing it for, my gosh, more than 20 years. But he did 20 years worth of kind of fill-in PA and organ at Three River Stadium and then into PNC Park. And speaking of that.
At the same time.
I know. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Incredible.
Yeah. But speaking of that, 20 makes sense because our guest on this edition of Hold My Cutter, coming your way, as always, here at Burn by Rocky Patel, right down the road from where he used to work at PNC Park. And we're going to talk about Tim Debacco, our guest. But speaking of about 20 years doing the organ and the PA, he has recommended our featured smoke this episode, the Rocky Patel The Edge 20th anniversary. It uses an Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper wrapped around a blend of premium long filler tobacco from Honduras and Nicaragua. Medium to full-bodied profile, fills your palate with notes of earth, floral, wood, pepper, and cocoa from start to finish. And it is a good smoke. And we're talking again.
And brownie. You know what? It's called The Edge.
The Edge. It's an edgy.
Timmy T brought it in.
Yeah.
Because he lives his life
on the edge. Timmy D, the great Tim Debacco, longtime public address announcer at Three River Stadium and PNC Park with the Pirates, longtime organist over at, before that, Mellon Arena, and now PPG. We're here with Tim Debacco, the great one. He's
the great one is right.
He's tremendous, and thanks for being here today, and thanks for that introduction.
Thank you for having me. I've watched so many episodes.
What do you think of Hold My Cutter?
You know, I remember when you and I were talking about your idea for the name of the podcast. And do you remember the other one that you had in mind?
I do not.
I think it was Blow and Smoke.
Ooh.
And you couldn't figure out if you wanted Hold My Cutter or Blow and Smoke. I thought maybe you should, you know how some hit records, songs have parenthetical phrases, like, for example, that's the way, parentheses, I like it.
Yes.
I never understood that, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Why it's not, that's the way I like it.
I don't know.
Why the parentheses?
But hey, that's why it's like that. We're asking the question.
I mean,
I can think.
Well, some songs it would be like, it's in his Kiss, parentheses, the Shoop Shoop song.
Yeah,
okay,
that
I get,
makes sense, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's the way, parentheses, I like it. I don't get it.
It makes
but
no
you
sense.
It could be Hold My Cutter, parentheses, Blow and Smoke.
Ooh.
Just a thought.
That's not a bad idea,
That's not a
actually.
bad idea.
We're going to have to add
Stay
that now.
tuned.
Yes.
No charge for that.
No charge. By the way, how do you like your smoke?
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice, you know.
Thanks for the recommendation.
Do you guys drink scotch?
We drink coffee right here out of this
Okay.
mug.
Yep.
I don't drink scotch. I had a friend who used to drink it, and he would get really into it. Like, I know you talked about all the things
Yes,
you could,
yes.
which, yeah, it's a real thing,
Mhm.
of course.
Yeah.
He would say, "Oh, I'm nosing the scotch, and I can pick up
Oh, the accents, yeah.
peat," and
Yeah.
he said circus peanuts.
Oh, my gosh.
Circus peanuts? Are you kidding me? So I didn't know if you could.
Was this friend an elephant?
Oh, my gosh. Tim Debacco.
His friend is Dumbo.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, right here. I'm his best friend, Dumbo.
Oh, I thought that was me, but okay.
Hey, tell us how it all started with you growing up
Please,
in East
because
Brady.
you're incredible at it.
East Brady, Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, I was thinking about this before coming on here because I have such an affinity and a love for the Pirates, and I was trying to figure out when did that all happen, because there was a time that as a youngster, I really wasn't into baseball. I hadn't been bitten by the bug for the Pirates and baseball. And to tell the story correctly, you have to understand about my late father. He boy, it was a dichotomy there of personalities. He was this rugged outdoorsman. He loved to be in the garden. He loved to hunt rabbits with his beagle dogs and hunt deer, and he was always outside tinkering, and he loved baseball. And I, on the other hand, was always inside playing records. I love my vinyl records and cassette tapes and 8-track tapes and television. And so I was always inside, probably much to his disappointment. In fact, I can remember just a quick side story. I think I had to be about 12, and he said to me, he was out working on his truck, and he said, "Hey, I want you to come outside and I want to teach you how to change the oil on the car." I'm like, okay. So I figure, hey, this is pretty important. So I got my tape recorder and trudged out. I was going to record it. I got out, and he's got the car up on the jacks, and he's what the heck? What the heck is that? And I said, well,
now I can remember.
If this is important, I have to record it. He says, So that was the kind of oil and water with my dad and me. And I can remember, I think it could have been watching the World Series in '71, and I remember saying to him, "Oh, I get it. So we play like the Giants one inning and the Orioles the next inning." No. And I think he gave up hope that I would ever love the game. And then what happened was Clemente passed away. And I remember waking up on New Year's Day, and I remember my dad was here after hearing the news, was just so saddened. And I said, what's going on? And he said, well, Clemente passed away. And he said to me later that day, he said, get your tape recorder out, and I want you to put it up to the TV on tonight's news, and I want you to record that and keep this tape. I still have the tape.
Wow.
Wow.
So he had me, record the audio from the TV speaker, the 6 o'clock news. And then a couple of months after that, here I am, I love records. And here comes Dad, and he says, I got this record in the mail. It's the Roberto Clemente Memorial album. He says, let's go into your room and listen to it. Wow.
Jeez.
That's, there's a bonding experience.
You guys came together with
we did.
two things you love.
Right.
Wow.
I listened to this album, and something happened then. I mean, just the actual radio clips from Bob Prince and the narration from John Facenda, and it just struck a chord in me, and Dad and I bonded. And then from there, I was like, hey, take me to a game. I think 1973 was the first game I went to at Three Rivers, and just to be in this, it was like a Disneyland. You're enveloped in this thing with this green turf, and I was hooked.
It gets in your veins.
Yeah,
it does, and you just can't get it out.
How often would you go with your dad then?
It was probably twice a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
For how long?
From that point forward, I would say.
You made it a point then, when you got the job, you made it a point to make sure he came to some games with your mom, right?
Sure. And then maybe we'd go to an Altoona Curve game, since I couldn't sit in the stands with him at Three Rivers or PNC Park.
How old were you when it all kind of came to life?
So I would be...
When you got hooked.
Michael, I would be about 9.
And do you think that was a driving force into what became Tim Debacco?
It was that, and then, and I think Greg can understand this because he was bitten by this bug too. I liked Bob Prince and listened to the games, but all of a sudden in 1976, here comes Milo Hamilton and Lanny Frattare. And I was really bitten by the bug then. I thought Milo Hamilton, and I know I'm in the minority on this, I thought he was just fantastic. He was this perfect combination of drama and enthusiasm. And I
love full spectrum.
I love Lanny too. And now, and I can't stop listening to the games. And then 1979 came around. I wish I would have brought my scorebook with me. I missed family events. I stayed at home. I kept score of every game. I wrote down what the uniforms they were wearing, what uniform combination, if the game was televised or if it was just on the radio. I had different colored pens for RBIs, and I was in deep. And then when they won, what more do you need?
That's awesome. You should see my notes. I do. They're not as clean as most, but I do all color coded and everything else. Yeah,
It's the best.
you get
right?
enthralled with it. Yeah, and I never would have dreamed that would have been me. But I absolutely love. I love keeping up with all of the things that are going on. So that's really cool to hear.
So it's
Really cool.
it's so much fun because, and we can get so deep into the weeds, he and I, because
Well, I want to
I
get
mean,
deep. His dad was an outdoorsman.
we are
Get deep in
so
those
it's
weeds.
weird. We're so similar. We actually share not the same year, but the same birth date. He and I were born on the same day, not the same year. So every year for
That's a good day. What day?
probably 20 years, maybe
Yeah.
more. We make certain,
Yeah.
hopefully on that very day.
What's
but
the day? What's the day?
November 13th.
November 3rd. Write that down.
We're both Scorpios. We both essentially got bitten by the pirate bug about the same time, same way.
Did you just say you're both Scorpios?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
Are
know.
you?
No,
Oh.
I'm a Pisces, but I didn't know.
Well, what do you think of that? Because I'm not really into.
Nah.
Well, we're both mysterious. I know that's
Ooh,
about
okay.
Scorpios are mysterious.
Okay, so he's not that into it, folks. We'll get into
and we
that
don't,
later.
and we don't like telling people a lot about ourselves. We're kind of secretive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you got the
So,
jive. Got it.
Yeah, but anyway, so and we both have this. I don't remember Prince much, but almost to the day remember when Milo Hamilton and Lanny Frattare took over.
Yeah, it was a world opened up for me, and I would in the 1979 season, I sensed something magical was going to happen, so I would record every game off the radio on a cassette tape, and of course I kept score so I could go back and do a recap, and on another recorder, another stereo system, I would say, here's how the ball game went. And the first, Tim
So you
Foley.
do a recap.
I
He
did.
put his own highlight
And
film
that's
together.
so cool.
And then I would
Yeah.
go to the. So every time the Pirates scored a run in like the last. I started doing this like in the last month and a half of the season. I had the actual sound on tape of when that run scored, and I just was consumed with it and couldn't get enough.
So what gave you the feeling that something magical was going to happen that season? Like maybe
Yeah,
there's a
it's
certain
a great
moment
question.
or something that just hit you, because I know that feeling. but-
I'm going to just you think about that, but for
I think I
me,
have an answer.
well, it's weird, but winning teams have this magic about
Yeah.
them.
Is it like an aura?
There's no way to explain it. Just crazy plays, walk-off plays.
Oh, you could just see it coming together.
It's magical, and I don't know. That's my explanation.
No, it's sometimes you can't define it.
Yeah.
You're right.
I love it.
I think the Milner Grand Slam against
your
the
specific
Phillies
moments, yeah.
it was just such a shot in the arm for the team. I remember a game, I stayed up for all of it, a 19-inning game in San Diego where Dave Roberts, he had the bases loaded and nobody out, and then he had a 3-0 count on a hitter with the bases loaded and got out of that, and we went on to win that game in 19 innings. Do you
And
remember
Dave
that?
Roberts, by the way, was a middling veteran who just came on board and didn't. I think he was left off the roster in the postseason. I believe. I don't think he was on the postseason roster. But
I don't know.
veteran
Yeah.
lefty who, again, that was magical because nobody would have expected him to perform like he did.
Yeah, so maybe it's that I'm remembering this, Michael, or maybe I really did feel it at the time, but when we got Madlock, I think it felt different then too. Like something was really starting to gel.
I love it.
Bill Madlock was acquired from the Giants during the season. It was like that one missing piece. They moved Phil Garner from third to second, and that was a perfect fit, right?
Yeah, you're so great at filling in gaps.
No,
So
I'm not.
I forget. A lot of people don't.
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
Who's Madlock?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I wasn't doing that intentionally.
No, I just had to tell you that because I love that.
Anyhow,
You're-
so
He- just such a
He
great
is incredible
host.
at it. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so '79 again. You're recording these games.
Yeah.
And as you say, you're missing events.
Yeah, I remember
Family
missing
event.
a family event. My dad was not happy, but
Well, you
He
should. Hey, Dad,
started
it's
it.
your fault.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Don't blame me.
Don't shoot the messenger.
So, what did you think now? So you end up through high school, you end up going to Clarion.
Yeah, and in Clarion, it was great because in the communications department, we could do whatever we wanted, sort of unsupervised by any faculty. I mean, they would, from afar, steer us in the right direction, but there was a group of us who every year would put together a special on the Pirates. We would find our own advertising, we'd produce it, we'd get our own lodging, we'd get our credentials from the ball club, we'd get our camera gear together, we'd conduct our interviews, and we'd come back and we'd put together this half-hour special, usually in April, a preseason look at the ball club. And so I got involved in this right away. And then my senior year, I was the host and wrote it and produced it, and needed a guy at the ball club to help me with getting B-roll for, other clubs, highlights. So I contacted this guy by the name of Greg Brown.
Who's that?
Some guy that was super helpful, and we became friends, and that never stopped.
Too cool.
Well, and I use you as an example of speaking to, young adults, kids interested in getting into the business or any business. I use Timmy D as the greatest example. I tell them that there's a fine line between being too much of a pain, and there is such a fine line, and he is spot on with it, at this time,
It's easy
because
to say now.
He was on the edge.
there we are.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was
See,
on the
talk
edge.
about bringing it back, Mr. Segway. But he was, because he was so nice as he is. That's who he is as a person. Didn't change as a person. Nothing phony about him, but stayed on it to the point where I remember at one time, I think we went to dinner or lunch at the Allegheny Club maybe once.
Yeah.
You came down and we chatted, but then take it from there. Once you're done Clarion, where'd you end up going?
I went to Morgantown, West Virginia, and worked doing middays at an oldie station in Morgantown. Pardon me.
And that's where you met your buddy. Is it Shannon?
Mark Sherman?
Mark Sherman.
Yeah, he was doing mornings.
Okay.
He went to Clarion.
Oh, okay. You
He
had known him
and I
before
were
that.
alums.
Okay.
He was doing mornings at WCLG, and I was doing middays. And then I came back. I had this background in TV production. There was a job opening in Pittsburgh doing TV production, so I came back, left the radio gig, and you want me to tell?
Yeah, we got time.
Okay. Oh, okay. So
And if you're not watching on YouTube, Timmy D just looked at his watch. We're just getting started, Timmy D.
Well,
you're not leaving anywhere.
no, this is
We
a
have
good-
him
this is a
handcuffed
good
back
there.
story. So Greg and I are friends. We were hanging out, and I don't know if you remember this. We were double dating, and we took our dates to the Ice Capades.
Oh, you guys go way back.
Wow.
You-
I don't remember who.
okay.
Do you remember who my date was?
Will you explain what the ice capades?
Well, it
What
was
is that?
it was
Yeah,
at the Civic
yeah,
Arena.
They don't do that anymore, I guess. The
Yeah.
It,
It was this.
They
this,
do
this,
like Mickey on ice and stuff now.
Oh
Ice
yeah,
Capades.
yeah,
It's
but
kinda
this was
the
more
same.
for adults,
Uh-huh.
Michael.
Uh-huh.
No, we weren't kids.
But I think Mickey could have been skating on that.
Maybe, but I think it was
Yeah.
more,
Let's be honest.
professional.
Okay, what's the ice capades?
Not that Mickey's not professional, but
Is it like Blades of Glory? Have you ever seen that movie?
yes.
Yeah, it's kinda like that.
A classier version of Blades of Glory.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. Now we have a reference.
So I remember you're saying to me, and by the way, before we get to the story, can I put you on the spot?
Of course.
So Art McKinnon was the longtime public address announcer from 1948 through 1986. Wow. And I was the PA announcer beginning in 1988 through 2022. So in 1987, do you know who the Pirates public address announcer was?
I have no idea. Greg Brown?
You got it.
Wow. So you did a 1 year.
I had a one, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was
Well-
filling in for him too for like
How
the
was
3 or
it?
4 years before that. I was doing because Art
Pre-game stuff.
pregame stuff, and
postgame?
then when he couldn't do doubleheaders because he had been stricken with polio. We'll tell the story because you got to know Art and became a great friend.
That's a long time.
Oh my gosh, he was a.
Wow.
He even did. There's so much stuff of Timmy D. He sat down and recorded I don't know how many hours with Art, because Art's
Just
knowledge
watched
of the
some of it.
history. He had. I mean,
Well, yeah, because he's in
he was a bat boy. He was
Come on.
Yeah, he started working for the club in 1919, and he
1919.
went from an errand boy to the foul tip boy.
Wait. Foul tip boy?
Yeah, like
So
he
they would run and get the ball?
That's right.
Like tennis.
He said there was a he
Oh,
said there was
I
a
wanna bring
lot
that
of room
back.
behind Forbes Field, behind the plate to the
That's the way it should be.
and so
Consequences.
he was that guy, and then he was the bat boy, and then, so that was he started that in 1919, and then he became the PA announcer in 48. But I do have some history there if you want to know about the
Yeah.
public address announcers.
Yes.
But wait, so where were we? Should we go there or should we go?
It doesn't
to,
matter. We like bouncing
Okay.
around. Go ahead.
Well, let's go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Art told me that the first and I have some of this written down in case I forget.
Oh, nice.
But
Awesome.
he
Look
said
at him.
great.
the first PA announcer is when they got the lights and the electronic scoreboard at Forbes Field, which was in 1940, according to Art. And so before that, I asked him, I said, well, was there a public address announcer before then? What? And he said, yes. The first public address announcer was the home plate umpire. And
What?
that before the game, he'd take off his hat and he'd turn around to the press box and he would announce the battery, rather.
Wow.
The pitcher and catcher. And that was it. And then
At least they knew who was important. Sorry.
Cy
Not sorry.
Young and Michael McKenry.
Whoops. Yeah, with one of the
Yeah. Megaphone.
megaphones, yeah.
yeah, that came next. You're
Oh!
right. You're exactly right.
Yes. Another segue.
There would be a guy, this is now in the 20s, according to Art, that this guy with a megaphone would announce the lineups and changes. And when he would do the changes, he would do them 3 times. He would do one round on top of the third base dugout. He would go behind the plate and announce it again with a megaphone, and then he would go on top of the first
How
base
cool
dugout
is that?
and announce the changes. So, and he gave me, this was pretty incredible because I think I did the interview like in the early 90s. And so we're talking about his having to remember the early 30s. And I asked him if he could remember all the PA announcers for the Pirates that preceded him. And he said the first one that would have had the megaphone was Nathaniel Mule Mole.
Wow.
He was Nat Mule Mole. He was from New Kensington, later the South Side.
The mole.
They called him Mule Mole. And then after that, it was Paul Coyle from Oakland. He said he later became a priest and eventually a monsignor and a secretary to the bishop.
What?
And then he said there was a guy from Oakland by the name of Cliff Baker, another one that he didn't remember, and then the first electronic PA announcer was a bartender at Gustine's in Oakland. His name was Francis Rooney.
My goodness.
And he told a funny story. He said that they had, so Francis Rooney he sat on the bench and there was a microphone near him either on top of the dugout or by the bench. And then it was time for the anthem and something happened. The recording that they had didn't work. And Francis Rooney said, according to Art, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, due to technical difficulties, we will dispose of the national anthem."
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
And then it was John Jeffers of Hazelwood. And then Art told me that he got a call. I can't remember. I just looked at it not too long ago. I can't remember. from whoever was in charge at the time and said, they heard his voice on the telephone and they said, you would be good. Would you consider being the PA announcer? And he said, well, I don't want to take anybody's job away. And they said, no, we're going to make a change no matter what. And he said, well, okay, if you're going to make a change, then I'm interested. So in 1948, Art took over and had that long run.
Now,
But
Timmy,
yeah,
when was he stricken with polio? Do you know?
yeah, it was.
As a teenager.
Gosh, I hate to be wrong. So I don't. I think it was either a teenager or
Okay.
in his very early 20s.
Okay. Because by this time, he had been pretty much on crutches.
I believe.
Yeah.
I believe so. And I have the information. I just don't know.
No.
off the top of my
Just
head.
curious to know.
Yeah,
Because
just
by the
such a
time now,
marvelous man.
by the time Art was a public address announcer when we met him at Three River Stadium, he was confined to a wheelchair.
Wow.
And he would have relatives or friends kind of wheel him up into the elevator. They drop him, he'd be at inner circle at Three River Stadium by Press Gate A, and they take him up the elevator, and he'd have someone there all the time. And Art was such a great man, and such a great Pirates fan.
Oh.
Anybody that knew Art, however, knew that if the Pirates lost a game, you don't go near Art McKinnon. You don't talk to him.
Oh,
and it was
yeah?
funny to watch
Exactly.
people that didn't know.
He was hot.
Oh, you have no idea. It was
Throw-
so awful.
just toss his
He would
scorebook
throw
and
his
pencil
scorebook, his
and-
crutches, he'd fire them.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to stay awake because you could get hit. And it was funny to see people that after games didn't know any better. Hi, Art! Whoa. Yeah. Anyhow, so back to
Yeah. So when he was dismissed after the '86 season, but then when I was hired, forgive me, man, wrong time to have that problem.
No, it's good. It's all
no,
part of it.
it's all natural stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have some coffee.
Yeah. In '88, when I was hired, Rick Cerrone, one of your other guests, just one of my all-time favorite people, he said to me, Tim, when he hired me, you're our guy, but we want to bring Art back as a tradition that he will do Sunday games. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. I was a huge Art McKinnon fan. I mean, when I was listening to those games on the radio, I was also always tuned into Art McKinnon. I was tuned into Vince Lashide, and they were part of the fabric of Pittsburgh and the Pirates. So when he brought Art back, I was like, wow, I'm now working alongside this guy. So we became friends, and he would mentor me, from time to time,
Too
and
cool.
he always taught me the 3 C's of public address: to be clear, to be concise, and to be correct. That stayed with me all of my career. And then a little bit later on, he got to the point where Rick asked me to be with him during the times that he would do PA on Sunday, sort of be his spotter. He was starting to decline, and so I did that, and he hung up the cleats, I think, maybe midway of '93, something like that.
Sounds right.
Well, started
But-
in 1919
1919 with
to
a club.
93. Wow. Wow, what a run.
Incredible. Just the nicest man. Just
Unless they lose. Unless they lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next
I
day
stopped
he'd
to-
forgotten it, but that yeah,
Well, he could shower it off. He just
yes,
got to
he
get it off.
showered it off.
Yeah.
I stopped to think about that, how long he did that. And here comes this 23-year-old that's now doing what he did. And he didn't have to embrace me like he did. He didn't have to be my mentor. He didn't have to be my friend, but he did.
No, and likewise. Actually, I was your buffer because
Yeah, I didn't replace a guy. I
I was
replaced the
like
guy. that
it was like
replaced
replacing Bob Prince or Ernie Harwell, and it was very difficult that they had made this decision that Art was going to be gone, and all of a sudden this young kid was going to take over for Art McKinnon. Who the heck am I? And that same thing, very, very gracious.
Did,
and
was everybody gracious? Or did you... Because he he stopped on his own terms. I'm
Oh,
assuming.
no, he did not stop at his own terms.
Okay, so that
No,
makes
no.
it even harder.
Oh, yeah.
So
It was very difficult.
you guys walking into that, like, how hard was that? Because I'm thinking about it as a player. It's never. I came in because of an injury.
Yeah.
My wife took an absolute beating in the stands from other wives because I took someone's job that I could not control. It was an opportunity because everybody's misfortune in the game is someone's fortune, and that's the way it's always been. So how did you
Well, and you have
how
to
did you guys
understand,
handle
too,
that?
back then, the only news, people got news literally by newspapers, radio, and TV. And just three. There were no cable back then. You know, it was just three
No Twitter,
TV
no
stations,
X.
no Twitter, no nothing. And it was people were not kind, and understandably so. They did not want Art McKinnon replaced.
They didn't like change.
No, it's, to this day, they don't like change.
Well,
Plus, he was
unless
so
it's a hitting
doggone
Plus,
coach.
he's an
good.
institution. I
He
mean,
was so good.
my goodness.
Well,
So,
people like Band-Aids.
yes.
Yeah, they
That's
think
true.
a Band-Aid's going to fix that,
That's
that,
right.
that
It's gonna
giant
fix everything.
wound, but yeah. it
So
usually
anyway,
doesn't.
so Timmy D goes in there, and he's so gracious, though, and so classy. And then you take over for this icon, and
After the buffer.
after the buffer.
So I guess I can segue to the ice capades now.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I figured you're just trying to, like, kind of wiggle around it.
I'm
But
sure
yeah, let's go back
everybody's
to the
on
capades.
the edge of his or her seat to
Oh.
learn more about the ice
I want to
capades.
put on skates right now.
I'm trying to think, was it Robin?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was, yeah.
Is Robin one of the dates?
And
Robin and Christy.
Christy. Robin, wow.
If you're out there, Robin Christie, hello.
Yeah.
So Greg says to me, you know, I'm leaving the PA position, and if I get this right, if I get it wrong, please correct me. You were wanting to get into the broadcasting department with the Pirates and do more things
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because at that time you had your aspirations
Yeah.
to do what you do now.
Right.
And I sort of you said to me, why don't you try out for that?
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of dismissed it, and I said, really? Do you think? And he's like, no, you should try out. So I threw my name in the hat, and it was a couple of weeks before the start of the '88 season. They ushered in there were maybe about 15 of us, ushered us into an empty Three Rivers. I'm going to go here. 1 second.
He's got to get
Pardon
it
me.
right. They're ushering him in. You see that?
Man. And they gave us each it was about a minute or so script. It was a welcome, and it was, here are the lineups. There was a promotional announcement, and they said, you can flip this around. You can switch it a little bit, add your own flair if you want. And I did change one thing. I was always a big fan of John Barbaro, the late great
Penguins. Yeah.
PA guy. And he used to do a thing where he said, tonight the National Hockey League presents, and then he would name the two teams. So I borrowed that from him, and in my script, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Three River Stadium. Tonight the National League presents. So a couple of days later, Rick Cerrone called me, and he said, hey, you're not moving anytime soon, are you? And I was just such a naive 23-year-old. I said, well, I'm going from an apartment to a house maybe soon. No, I mean, you're not like moving to Cincinnati or anything, are you? No. He says, well, okay, then you're our guy. And he says, I like that you did that little tonight the National League presents.
He liked that.
He did. He made mention of that. And that's how I got. I mean, I didn't have to. There wasn't a formal interview. There wasn't. I didn't have to give a resume, and I spoke a lot better than I am right now.
Well, you're sounding great. So
He's
don't,
just choked up
do
thinking
not worry.
about it.
Yeah.
I'm out of practice.
No. And so you do that. You do.
He was thinking about Robin and Christy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So you do the audition, and shortly thereafter, do you know how many people Timmy D ended up auditioning?
I think it
for
was
that?
about 12 or 15.
Okay. And then once you started doing that, was there was it hard not to, because you and I talked about this, we both do impersonations. I would impersonate announcers and public address announcers,
Sure.
including Art.
Yeah.
And
Can we hear one?
Oh, he does it. He does it
well,
very
anyway,
well.
we will in a second. We will in a
okay,
second.
okay.
But it was hard not to almost emulate Art and be your own public address announcer. Was that difficult? Not really.
I don't remember
Okay.
it being no.
Because you talked also about, though, being, you wanted to be gracious to him as he was still doing
Yeah.
Sundays. And, you know, he had certainly his own style, but he also did, in fact, one of the things he always did was,
Well.
ladies and gentlemen, if you'll have your pencils and scorecards ready, here are the starting
Well, you
lineups.
bring up a good point, and that is that
Things that he would do.
I think more so emulating his style, I didn't do, but I did follow a lot of his same format.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the example that you bring up that I always did, ladies and gentlemen, and now if you'll have your scorecards ready, that came from Rick Cerrone. He suggested that I do that.
Oh, really?
Maybe he
That's
took that from
ingrained
ours.
in my
I
head.
thought Art did that I thought Art began the.
He
I
could
thought
have.
I thought he said if you'll have your scorecards
That's ingrained
ready.
in my
I thought
head.
he did. Maybe not.
Like hearing that, it's ingrained in my. I can hear it
Yeah.
over and over again.
Well,
It's so cool.
Michael, and everyone who's watching and listening, make no mistake, the three forces that guided me through my growth as a PA announcer were Art McKinnon, Rick Cerrone, and Greg Brown. I mean, there are so many things this guy helped me with. Just
Well, for
Just
me, that
a
was
pro.
Art, though, Timmy D. I mean, Art, to your point, the 3 C's, but Art would impress upon you to make sure, you know, my diction. You know, he, in fact,
absolutely.
so when I was doing,
Real quick, for people that don't understand, explain what that means.
well, so when I was doing, when I was sitting with him, did you sit with him during game? I guess you did because you were his spotter for a while.
Yeah.
So
And-
which
and
I
when
did
you're
as
talking
well.
about spotter, is that kind of what a executive producer or producer would do now, so to speak?
just more to maybe look out for changes. Oh, here comes a pinch hitter on the on-deck circle.
Okay.
You know. it's-
Okay. That's a lot what we get in the.
In addition, and I don't know, we're kind of doing this on the fly. We didn't prepare in this case.
but that's what the coolest part is, because I don't know a lot of this stuff.
So I don't recall timing-wise when Timmy actually took over, but I do remember being there with Art. So Art had not only the microphone there in the sound room at Three Rivers Stadium.
The old school mic.
Old school microphone,
Yes.
stick mic, but also a big board where he would punch in on the manual scoreboard. He would punch in the
Yeah, he ran the balls and strikes.
balls and
outs.
strikes, outs.
Wow.
I don't know what else on there. I think you had to change the numbers for the batteries, if I'm not mistaken.
Could be.
Anyway,
Could be.
Old timey scoreboard.
old time. Well, it was. Back then it was a new scoreboard, but
But like it probably had innings, outs, count, and like you said, the battery is
Yeah.
usually what the old timey
Yeah.
scoreboard had.
and
Like not
but it
old
was up,
timey,
it
but
was
like
up to him to punch in the outs.
okay,
And
that's like
Yeah,
the
I can
balls and
see
digital.
the
strikes.
board. I think you're right.
did you have that?
I can see. I could see.
I think it's a
the
new
old board.
Yeah.
It was.
But did you have to do
numeric
that when you?
scoreboard.
No.
By the time you were
No.
there, okay.
No, and I remember that was like one of.
When the
I
new
think it was like a
scoreboard came
union
in.
job, and he was.
That's right.
He was like entrenched in that, and
That's right.
Yeah, that they weren't. The new PA guy was not going to do that.
Yeah. So anyway, on occasion, for me, and I think the same would hold true for Timmy D, if you announced a name, and he would want you to make certain, I can't think of one name back then, but, let's just say it's Angelo Encarnacion. Make sure you say Angelo Encarnacion. Be specific. You use that diction. Be strong with that. And he ingrained that into my head.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he did that with you,
Yeah,
too.
for sure. For sure. And I remember, too, you're telling me, you hear a lot of PA announcers out there start off by everything with, your attention, please. Your attention, please. And I remember early on you're telling me, You know, I'd shy away from that because that's almost like crying wolf.
Yeah,
it's
too
like
much.
if you say your attention please for everything, and then you really need their attention,
You're not going to get it.
You're not going to get it.
It's like breaking news on these cable
Yeah,
news
if everything's
outlets. Breaking
breaking,
news,
yeah, it's not
breaking
really
news,
breaking.
breaking news.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me, like, you know, if there's you know, maybe there's a dignitary that's going to be recognized, or, you know, maybe there's a, God forbid, a poison gas leak or something, you know. that okay, your attention please.
Attention, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, we would have to, back then you'd have to say, your attention, please.
Run for your lives.
Yes. There's
Do not sniff
a
or
car
take
with a
in
license
oxygen.
plate.
Oh, my gosh.
C50035. Your car is running.
There's Art McKinnon
that
right
kind
there.
of thing.
I love it.
And an example would be Derek Shelton. That comes to mind a lot. I do, and I'm trying to catch myself. Derek Shelton, the manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Art would say, no, it's Shelton. Derek Shelton,
Yeah.
the manager of the Pirates. It's not Derek Shelton. It's Derek Shelton. But interestingly enough, when I've watched Derek himself say his own name, he says Shelton. So it's weird.
It's conversation, and it's formal,
Proper, yes,
presentation,
yes,
right?
yes,
That's
yeah.
the difference. I remember, I think we had this discussion about Al Martin.
That's another one.
You know,
Al
you
Martin.
He just said Al Martin.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, you don't swallow. You don't. It's not Al Martin when you're over the mic because you're not enunciating. By the way, I have to tell you this story. This is like maybe my first or second year on the job. I was interviewed by Nellie Bryles, great former Pirates pitcher, former Pirates broadcaster. Yeah, I took your. You would normally do that. I took that role where I filled in the gaps.
I love it. I love it.
You're so good at that.
Yeah, I love it.
You are. You're just so good at that. The way
I'm
you
sorry,
fill in the
I
gaps.
won't keep doing
That's my
that.
shtick. Come
I
on.
stole your thunder.
We like shopping at the Gap, right, Greg?
That's right.
That's right. That's good.
Nellie interviews me and says, "Tim, what's the hardest part of your job?" And I said, "Or what? You know, how do you prepare the most?" And I said, "Well, the biggest part of the preparation is going over the pronunciations." And I kept saying that. I think that's it. Probably just making sure I get all the pronunciations right. And a dear friend of mine, Chuck Aber, played Good Neighbor Aber on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood,
Oh my gosh. Wow.
came to me and said, "Thank God he did this. You know, I always appreciated this." He pulled me aside. He goes, "Hey, I heard your interview. Sounded great. But I just want to tell you that the correct pronunciation of the word pronunciation is pronunciation."
It's not pronunciation, it's
Right.
pronunciation.
Right.
Yeah. How about that? That's good.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So that you had to work on it a little bit more.
Obviously,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Well, just know that would be incredibly hard for me. So what you guys do,
So-
I look up to in a giant way.
Oh,
So somebody said to me, when Timmy D retired a couple years ago, we would talk about, on the air, about him with maybe Bob or Steve or some other, John Wayner. One of them said, and it might have been even it was more than one guy that said it, but it holds true. Never heard him make a mistake.
Oh, me and Kinger joke around about it all the time.
Of all the years,
I never heard him.
Never
I never
You
even
guys-
heard him go. Nothing.
and never made a
well,
mistake.
I'm covering for 35 years
Hey, it doesn't
tonight,
matter. You are
today.
not the PA announcer right now.
But that's almost impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, it is impossible.
Well,
Do
first
you-
of all, you weren't paying enough attention
Oh,
because
yeah.
I made plenty of mistakes. And,
we did it with Grace.
well,
It's
Thank
not
you.
true. We
I-
never did. So,
I
Well, I was just trying to play into it. Okay, Brownie?
yeah.
yeah.
Good luck.
That's
Yeah.
just not, that's kind of you, and
You
I
lived on the
appreciate
edge.
it, but I made plenty of mistakes. I can remember one time there was it was time for the anthem, and we were playing the Montreal Expos, and I completely forgot about the Canadian anthem. I just introduced. I was so embarrassed.
It's easy to do.
That's
easy.
I was
Let's be honest.
mortified.
That is
What did
easy
you
to do.
What was the mistake?
I just said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we ask you now to please rise here to perform our national anthem," and then I just skipped over Canada, they still performed it, but I just didn't introduce it.
So that's not a mistake.
Well,
You didn't. Nobody.
An omission
Hey,
that no one noticed.
Hey,
Again,
that's like live TV.
There it is.
Nobody knew.
So the one error he made in his
Oh, it's
career
not the
was
one.
Yeah,
an omission
but,
of.
But live TV, live broadcast.
Yeah.
You didn't do something that no one knew,
Right.
so you didn't actually make a mistake.
right.
You just stayed in
That's
flow.
a technicality.
That is a technicality.
Yeah.
Former general manager Sid Thrift used to say the difference between an error of omission and an error of commission, right?
That's exactly right.
But
Yeah.
I made plenty of errors of commission too.
how about Art McKinnon's greatest mistake? Do you remember that one?
Well, I wasn't.
So he didn't have one of these.
You got
There
to tell
go.
this because
It
I
was
wasn't.
incredible.
It's
but Art
wonderful.
would. But Art didn't like Art would in the. I guess it was later in years, understandable. He would do this stuff like this on occasion, where he would, seemingly in the middle, almost in the middle of a pitch, say something. It didn't do it often, but the one time, the Pirates had a pitcher named Jim Wynn, and at the same time had an outfielder named Marvell Wynn. Okay?
Not related.
Not related. W-Y-N-N-E was Marvell, an African-American center fielder. Jim Wynn, W-I-N-N, was a right-handed pitcher for the Pirates. And Marvell Wynn steps into the batter's box. And as he's stepping in, now batting, center fielder, Jim Wynn. And Art notices his mistake before the pitcher. Now the pitcher is just about ready to go into the windup. In fact, he has started to. And Art doesn't care. He says, "Correction, that's Marvell Wynn. Sorry, Marvell." And the umpire throws up his arms, looks back in the press box, stops the game stops. The pitcher looks up.
Yes.
The game stops.
Marvell definitely got a hit.
classic.
He had to get a hit there.
I don't know, but it was.
That's great.
A great moment.
That was one of
That was back
Art's
then.
many charms, though.
Yes.
He was all about getting things
Getting it right.
correct. The three C's,
That's amazing.
right?
Yeah.
I was spotting him one time, and it was like in the bottom of the sixth, and he keys his mic, and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for the seventh inning stretch." Oh no.
no.
And I, I'm right next to him, and I off mic, I go, Art, it's the bottom of the sixth. And if it were me, I would have curled up in a ball and said nothing more, and just that. But he got back on the mic and he said, "Correction, we are 1/2 inning away from the seventh inning stretch."
That's great though.
Right.
Because if you're a fan, you're like, that's just priceless.
Yeah.
Right?
His
That's
charm, as you
priceless.
said, that was Art.
Yeah.
One of
That's
the great all-time public address announcers. Did you have a favorite moment when you announced a player consistently that you liked to announce? A moment that stands out for you?
Well, that might be two different
Yeah, it
questions.
is, it is.
Okay. I think my favorite was either or both Andy Van Slyke and Jack Wilson. They were two of my favorite all-time players.
Jack
And-
Wilson's one of my favorite people on the planet.
Yeah,
I'll be with him this
I love
weekend.
the episode too when you
I
had him on.
love
It was
Jack.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
And-
kind of taking me under his wing, kind of like
Uh-huh.
Brownie did with you.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So when it comes to coaching and stuff, so he's been great to me.
Please tell him I said hello.
I will.
Jack Wilson, former Pirate shortstop.
Yep. Soon.
That's what you call overthrowing
Oh,
in the biz.
Oh.
Yeah. That's a little.
All right. Yeah, and he will.
So-
he will win a College World Series. Mark my
I
word.
believe that, no doubt. Good. How would you announce
Well-
Andy Van Slyke?
This, I swear to God, this stuff just kind of happened organically
Yeah.
with me. There wasn't really a lot of forethought to it. Andy was sort of like this, sort of a sly, sinister in a good way guy, like prankster, like to have fun, and I just sort of did it in a sing-songy center fielder, Andy Van Slyke. And then for Jack Wilson, he was, he had this intro song that he played when he came up, Jumpin' Jack Flash. He was just a magician out there at short, and everything was quick, and so I just did his name quickly, just shortstop Jack Wilson.
Oh, that's great.
And I just
So those are two of your favorite players to
Yeah,
announce.
yeah.
That's
What about
awesome.
favorite moment or moments?
favorite moment, it had to, well, in addition to the very first game.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah, sure. I was a nervous wreck.
And
Yeah.
Pirates are playing the
Phillies.
your first name that you ever announced.
Was
That'd be
Juan
How
Samuel.
about that?
Yeah.
Juan Samuel.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah. What was he, second baseman?
Second baseman.
Yeah. Favorite moment, it'd probably have to be the wild card game against the Reds.
More so than the divisions game, the 90, 91, 92?
I think so.
Wow.
Can
think
I
so.
tell you,
Isn't
him,
that something?
him announcing my name during that wild card game, because I was 2 days off crutches, maybe.
Wow.
And they were scared to death. They almost didn't let me go out to the line. But Hurdle and someone were like, let him go. Think it'd be a good moment. And they let me go, and I walked. And you let it, you played it
play
out.
out.
You know, number 55, Michael.
How did you say it? Do you remember?
I don't know if you remember this at all, but it's like you had an instinct and you played my name longer because I couldn't run.
Ah.
So like I was the only guy that walked out to the line and I had to walk all the way through, and the fans, their reception to me still can make me kind of tear up, and it made me fall in love with Pittsburgh even more. But you drew that out for me. You have probably no clue.
I am gobsmacked that you I'm flattered that you paid attention to that and remembered it.
I've been fortunate enough to look back and reflect on some
Oh, my
moments in my
goodness.
career. Did not do it good as a player. I was always in the moment, and sometimes always looking at that next moment. But you and Greg
Jeez.
Brown had two of my favorite moments of my career, being one is my first home run, and then that second one, 13 game, because I'd just gotten, I guess, cleared to go in the actual dugout.
Yeah.
I had to wear this giant
Yeah.
protection on my knee, and I walked out, and you drew out my name. And I'll never forget it. I don't know if someone told you. I have no idea how you knew, but you said my name, and you drew it out as I was coming out. I had to be one of the longest names. I went back and looked at it. And
You just made my month.
well, you did it. You had to do it at instinct, and that's why time and understanding of the game and moments of the game, you guys do an incredible job. You filled in the gap, so to speak, in a moment that I'll never forget. And my mom and dad were in the crowd, which was really cool because they didn't come to many games. Everything about that moment is a big reason why I'm back here and why I want to bring playoff baseball back to Pittsburgh some way, shape, or form. Because that moment, not being a part of the team, but doing everything I can behind the scenes, you drew out a moment, and it was the only moment I had on the field for 2 months. So think about that and the impact you had, and you probably never knew it. And I just want to give you a big kudos because
Whoa.
that was special to me and made me fall in love with the game more, made me fall in love with the city more, made me fall in love with winning. I mean, probably more than anything.
Michael, thank you. First of all, thank you, and thank you for sharing that very personal account. That's tremendous. I'm honored to hear that from you.
I couldn't wait to tell you that. So
Jeez.
somehow he segued right into it.
My
Like, yes,
gosh.
here we go. And I love that was your favorite game because
Yeah.
it was special.
Where do we go from here?
Well,
that was so kind of you, Michael.
That leads me to the question about when you're the public address announcer, the general you are literally removed from the field and the club, especially at this day and age. Three River Stadium was only 3 levels, and you're literally closer to the field of play, but still very little interaction with players. There's no real reason for a public address announcer necessarily. However, there were times over your career that you would interact with a player. Now, if a player passes by Tim Debacco, don't know you from Adam. They don't see your face. So you would have to go introduce yourself to a player. And occasionally you would do that, right?
Yeah,
To get the proper pronunciation.
exactly.
Not pronunciation, pronunciation.
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, I didn't do it as much later on just because of what you profess. That I think after 2001 and security at the new ballpark, and if you didn't have a reason to be on the field, you didn't go there. But if I was unsure, there was sort of a pecking order of, okay, if you want to confirm the correct pronunciation of a player's last name, what do? Well, in olden years, they would put out a handbook, called a National League Green Book or an American League Red Book, and they had pronunciations. Sometimes they were right. Sometimes you learned they weren't. So or you would go to the visiting media relations person. I'm sure, you're very used to doing that. And sometimes that would work, and sometimes you learned that wouldn't always work. And so you felt like, I just got to go to the horse's mouth,
Yeah.
right? So I remember one time going down on the field and flagging down Craig Biggio and saying, hey, is it Biggio or is it Biggio? And his answer to me was, either way, whichever one,
Good. I'm glad I
one you
made
want.
this trip.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Craig.
Yeah.
And I said, no. If I ask your mom and dad,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what would they say? And he said, Biggio. I said,
Yep.
that's what.
One of my favorite players growing up, by the way.
There you go. Another
Catcher,
segue. How about
turned
that?
second baseman. Yeah.
So that was
So-
not many times during
Not
the
many
course of
times.
the, yeah.
Early on in my career, I did some things on the field, promotions on the field, like the Pizza Hut pop-up contest and I got to interact with players a lot more then. And Andy Van Slyke was one that befriended me, and he was so great with me, and we sort of just, I don't know, struck up this little bit of a friendship. And he even said to me one time, hey, why don't you come in the clubhouse sometime and play cards with us before the game? I'm like, yeah, I thanked him, but I was like, there's no way I was going to do that. There's no way. I don't know if he seemed sincere, and I was flattered.
He probably was. That doesn't come lightly.
Gary Varsho was another one that was just such a kind guy to me, and we struck up a friendship. But
Anybody? So there's a couple there that you got to know a little
Yeah.
bit. Anybody on the other side? Anybody come down on you at all? Anybody seek you out and say, you're not announcing my name properly? That ever happen? Probably not,
No.
hard pressed to
because you
think.
were too prepared to make sure that
Well,
didn't happen, right? You never
I
had
don't
any
know.
run-ins.
I think the only umpires
Umpire, oh
took
my goodness,
exception
yeah.
to things.
Yeah.
And
They're sensitive.
They are.
They're sensitive.
They are.
Let's
had
be honest.
Maybe just a bad day or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's hard to have a good day. Their best day are
It's
usually
tough.
when they go
Tough
completely
job.
unnoticed. That's a great umpire day. So when they get noticed, it's not good.
Yeah, I got called into the umpires' room a couple of times, and I can't even remember what
For what
I wish
reason,
I
yeah.
could. I could.
You know what it
I
was?
wish I could remember.
It was
I
the way
can't.
they introed them. I told you that was my favorite.
Oh yes.
I'm gonna figure out that theme song, but
Sinister
there's a
theme
theme
song,
song,
yeah.
and there's a tone change.
Yeah.
There's a tone change, and that legacy's been carried on. I mean, I've been hearing it the last couple of years. So you started something.
It was some
Yeah.
TV theme music, right?
was.
Like
It
Mission
was.
Impossible or
Some-
I don't
something.
know.
L.A. Law or-
It was L.A. Law,
Yeah.
Matlock, something that had to do with law because those guys were the law.
I think I do remember. I think it had to do, and this is an interesting part of PA that you can talk about too. I think it was about announcing a bat. I was always so careful with this, announcing a batter who wasn't officially in the game.
Uh-huh.
It would
That's
be
hard. That's got to be hard.
because I think maybe many out there think that once the PA announcer announces a pinch hitter, that's the moment that he's officially in the game, and it's not. It's when the umpire looks up to the press box and
Does
says,
this thing?
This guy, right?
Right here.
We're doing
Yeah, yeah,
hand
yeah.
signals
Yeah.
in 2024.
It's great. Yeah, when you
Yeah.
have all this technology, you're doing hand signals.
And maybe I announced a pinch hitter before the umpire did that, and maybe that's why I got a talking to. I can't remember, but I think that's what it was.
Can I tell you about those hand signals?
Go ahead.
So
you
in
love
the,
them.
I'm in the minor leagues. You guys will love this. So I got really close with a lot of different umpires. I can't remember who this umpire was. If I could, I would not even hesitate to say his name. But they had hand signals to the girls in the stands. So they were actually giving hand signals to where the hot girls were in the stands.
So
We're
they,
just-
they were not even indicating anything to the press
Yeah,
box.
we're on.
Yeah.
No, nothing to the press box.
Wait,
So-
I think that's a pinch hitter. Wait, no. Is it a reliever? Who's got?
Oh,
he's-
that's
he's
a
out.
line in the stands. Excuse me, folks.
Wait, he's
Yeah.
pointing to
Oh,
somebody
check
in,
out the
in
brunette.
dugout.
Yeah.
What, did he just eject someone? What's going on?
Yeah, so I don't know if it was like, I don't know how they did it, but he was telling me about it, and we were on the road, and it just happened to be where a lot of the wives and girlfriends. I was married really early in my career, so my wife was there, some of the girlfriends, some of the fiancés, and he was pointing out to our girls. So I just let it go.
Oh, my
I was like,
gosh.
oh yeah, oh wow, yeah. Those are some really good looking. And I was like,
You old
yeah. So I just
dog.
let it go for about 3 or 4 innings. I was like, And by the way, that's my wife.
Oh, my
That's her
gosh.
friend. And blah, blah, blah. He's like, didn't know what to say.
Okay,
It was
you're
great.
the catcher?
Yeah.
Strike,
Yeah.
strike, strike. You're out.
No, I think I got all the calls
I'm
that day.
saying.
Yeah. He's like, ball,
Yeah, yeah.
strike,
When
strike.
you're at
Got
the
it.
plate, yeah, ball,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I walked 4
Wow.
times
Yeah.
that day, for sure.
Oh,
So-
that's
And
great.
here, all this time during my 35 years, it was just pinch. I thought it was just pinch hitter, and he's batting
Oh,
fourth.
yeah, he
but,
wanted a
but
pinch
no.
hitter, but for after the
Yeah.
game. Yeah, yeah. That's what he was looking for.
Why
So-
he's got the number 9 man goes to number 4? Why does he have the pitcher batting fourth? What's
Yeah.
going on here?
Yeah, why does he keep going to two? Two
Oh,
with
my
the point.
goodness.
2 with the point. I don't get it. So,
I always wondered that, though. We did that for well, we're still doing it. You know, we look up and the umpire is, pointing the shortstop and batting. I mean, we don't see it as much now with a designated hitter, and I even remember there was a point at PNC Park where the technology was implemented. It was put in place where we had a phone behind home plate that the umpire could now just call up to the press box and say, hey, the left fielder just moved to right and the pitcher's batting third or what.
well, now they have a pack.
But they
can turn it on and tell you.
right.
And I wish they would.
But they never
They
used
can
the
tell
phone.
the audience. They can tell everybody.
Yeah, just like they did back in the day. Bring back some old school.
I mean, imagine the umpire, rather than doing the hand signals, turning the mic on and saying, now entering the game, whatever it would be.
Yeah. Now in to
Yeah,
play left
pinch
field.
hitter, yeah. Anyhow.
Too easy.
That makes sense.
We enjoyed this episode. If you enjoyed this one, you're going to love the next episode with Tim Debacco on Hold My Cutter.
Being asked back.
Maybe.
Yeah, Timmy. Come on.
Tim Debacco's favorite podcast, Hold My
That's
Cutter.
exactly right.